Doc Allie here today to discuss my testimony about my time in medicine. Stay tuned. This is a very candid video about my time, my faith, my experiences as a Christian in medical school. It's not to force my religion down anyone's throat or make anyone uncomfortable, so please feel free to tune off of this video and just stick to my academic advice and clinical rotation advice. But this video is more so out there for people who are just going through it in medical school. Maybe you need some encouragement. Maybe you need to hear a testimony to, rebuild that faith. But that's what this is. We're going to talk about my time in medicine. All right, so where does the journey actually begin? And I guess you could say, let's take it way back to my first medical school, right? I was on that island. I was very depressed, but the one thing that I had to look forward to every weekend was the student-led church. There was a student service every Sunday. We would sit there, we would sing together, worship together, and we would watch Transformation Church. And that experience, like the community of having other Christian students to worship with on the island during this very hard time, was something that was really beautiful. And I would say that especially during this hard time on this island, my relationship with God really did grow. So if you don't know the story already, I ended up not making it my first time in medical school. I missed my histology class by 0.5 and the school refused to round it up. And then I missed anatomy by 2 points. And it sounds like minor, I guess, the 0.5 and 2 points, but it was devastating. And so much so that I cried and I told my father, I'm sorry, I'm such a disappointment. And he told me, you're not a disappointment. He said, well, you just got to come home and recalibrate. And that's what we did. I went home. I retook the MCAT. I scored a lot better. Or not a lot better, but at least 13 points higher than the first time when I tried. I started shadowing. I started getting my job as a scribe. And then I also worked on my master's during that time period. And I was just trying to build my application to look like a good medical student. But there was always that big old F on my transcript. The transcript doesn't show how much you failed by. It shows an F only. And so I had that F trailing behind me. And when I did try to reapply to every school, including, and this was the most humbling experience of my life, a Caribbean medical school rejecting me because of these Fs. So before all of the rejection started to roll in, I'll never forget, I was sitting in Sunday school and we were talking about the story of Moses. And it was just that humbling time when it was about Moses once being a prince of Egypt to now being a humble shepherd, like the lowest of the low, right? And God told me, and I can't describe to you how I know God's voice from anything. It's not like I directly hear a voice. It's more like that thought that comes into my mind. And I know we know about intrusive thoughts. It's not an intrusive thought, but it's a thought that comes into my mind that is separate from every other thought, that has I can't even describe it, like an importance. It's like, hey, pay attention to me over here. God's voice said, you don't want to be a nurse. So at this point, my family is like, okay, you have to have a backup plan. If you started getting rejection letters, what are you going to do if you can't get into medical school? My mom is a professor at a university. She teaches nursing students. I could have gotten into a nursing program, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I wouldn't have had to pay tuition or anything. And so they were trying to get me, my parents were trying to push me in that direction, like, okay, this should be your backup plan, go to nursing school. I was like, I really don't want to do that. I prefer maybe going to get a PhD. But then my friend talked to me and she was like, I don't really see you as a PhD biology instructor, that's not you. And so I was in this very hard place where I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't know what's my backup plan. And so I'll never forget when God talked to me in that Sunday school session, and he told me, you don't want to be a nurse. What are you willing to sacrifice in order to be a doctor? And after my traumatic experience at the island, and let me not do that actually, because people experience trauma in different ways. So yes, my first medical school experience was traumatic. It was very humbling, it was very depressing, it was very bad for my mental health. So yes, it really was traumatic, no air quotes, okay? So when I ran away from there, I legit had like some type of, I don't want to call it PTSD, but it was a trauma response to that island. So when people would ask me about that school, about that island, they would kind of trigger a stress response in my body, and I wouldn't want to talk about it. I would shut down, I would change the subject, I'd be like, no, we're not talking about that, and I'm not even exaggerating. So there was definitely a stress response to that school, to the idea of the Caribbean in general. Like, I was really trying to be a better student so I wouldn't have to go to the Caribbean. But for some reason, that wasn't seeming to be working, right? And so I was like, okay, God, I'll do it. I'll go back to the Caribbean. Because in my head, in my mind, I've gone through all the options. I've really talked things through with everyone. I've been praying, I've been fasting. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. So if I can't think of a backup plan, if I can't make one in my head, does that mean that this is all that there is for me? So comes to pass, my job had this promise, because I was a scribe, it had a promise that it could guarantee me an interview with one of the Caribbean medical schools. I was like, bet, okay, I guess everything's working out. Like, I figured it out. But no, like I said, that humbling slap in the face came when the Caribbean school rejected me, saying, sorry, we'd rather not give you a second chance. We'd rather give someone a first chance. After they took my $50 in money, after they made me go through all that, send this in, send that in, then they rejected me, knowing from the jump who I was as a student, basically. That was really frustrating. And so now I've got no options, because I've applied to every school that I thought was accredited in the Caribbean, I've applied to every U.S. medical school. I've applied to the Caribbean medical school that I thought was left that was accredited in the Caribbean, because the other ones my dad ruled out for one reason or another. Like, we went through a whole list together, and I was like, there's nothing left. And my parents are like, okay, nursing. I'm like, no. So let's rewind a little bit. My biggest mistake for my own pain, my own suffering, my own trauma was saying that God was taking too long to answer me and I was going to make my own decision. When I first applied to medical schools, I was getting rejected left, right. That's when my friend, she says, hey, I'm going to this spot in the Caribbean. Do you want to come with me? I'm like, okay, well, you know what? God hasn't said anything. Fine. I'm going to go to the Caribbean and I'm going to go to medical school. And she was like, you might want to check out the place before we go. And I'm like, no, any school that takes me, I'm happy. Let's go. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm good. Like, let's just go. Because I've moved so much in my life, I assumed that I was just going to be able to adapt. And that wasn't the honest truth. Like, I wasn't able to do that. So I learned from that, definitely, that I can't rush God. And that's what I tried to do. So with this lesson in mind, that I can't rush God, and my parents are trying to rush me to make a decision. Mind you, these people, I love my parents, and I'm not faulting them, because I feel everything happens on our journey for a reason. And neither of my parents are doctors. So it's not their, field. They don't really understand the process or everything. But remember, they kind of rushed me to take the MCAT. They're like, just get it out the way. You'll do fine. You'll pass. And so now they're like, okay, you're going to go into nursing school. And I'm like, no. I'm not rushing God. Like, yes, every door seems to have closed in this moment, but I am fasting and I am praying, and I know without a shadow of a doubt, He will answer me. I don't know when. I can't give you guys a timeline of when, but I'm going to wait for that answer. And eventually one day my mom came to me and she was like, have you ever heard of this school? And I'm like, no, me and Daddy went through the whole list of all the accredited Caribbean schools, and that is not one of the schools that we ever even talked about. And she was like, look into it. Somehow I was able to get past my idea that we had already figured it all out. And I looked into the school. Okay, they actually do say that they're U.S. accredited. So I reached out to this woman, and I owe her, I promised, like, if you ever see this video, I owe you something once I graduate. I promise it. But I reached out to her. I told her everything. I said, this is why these medical schools have rejected me in the past. I said, do I have a good enough chance to apply here? Because I'm really like, my email could not say how desperate and tired I was of the rejection and the hurt. So that email was really pleading, like, please don't waste my time. And she responded so positively, despite the lack of professionalism I feel like I should have better enforced in that email instead of despair. But she responded promptly. She was like, no, I think you'd be a great fit for the school. And even during my interview, which she also was a part of, she told me, like, I think you experienced some type of culture shock, but I feel like you'll be much better at this school. This is how they teach here instead. I feel like you'll be good. And so I was like, okay, this is one of those things that it just felt like it was the right thing to do. So I was like, okay, we're going to go here. We're going to do this. So I think, and I'm going to try to not get emotional when I'm telling this part of the testimony, is just the fact that I just wanted to pass at my first medical school, and I tried to do everything within my power to pass. I studied long hours. I was over consuming caffeine. I basically was killing myself, like coffee, Red Bull. My mental health was horrible, but I kept pushing no matter what. And I just wanted to pass, but I couldn't. And that, I think, is a testimony within itself, is when you're going against God's will and you're really trying to force something and it's just not working. You need to step back and like reevaluate, like, maybe I'm going against God's will and that's why things aren't working out, no matter how hard I try or no matter what I do. Just stop. Stop trying to go against the will. Reevaluate, figure out, talk to God, figure out what it is that He's trying to tell you. And so I went from not even being able to pass until like the very end. It was like things started like clicking together, but it was too late at that point. So I remember that I went into my first exam extremely nervous. I was like, Mom, I studied, I did everything. And she said, well, then you've got it. And I said, no. I went into my first exam at that first medical school thinking I got it, and I got a 69.5 on that first test. I said, no, I don't know if I really do have it. She said, you've got it. Go in there, pray, and go in there. And so I have never stopped praying. I pray before my exam. I pray before I sit down for my exam. I pray during my exams when I need to, and I pray after my exams. There is like a continuous line of prayer. And I walked away from that test somehow feeling good. That was something I never experienced before either. Fast forward, I got an A. I got my first A in medical school. Then I took my next exam. I was like, hey, this is a very challenging test, mind you. Like, our histology teacher, he was hard. But I was able to take that test too. And I was like, I think maybe somehow I've got the hang of medical school. And so this goes to say that when you are aligned with God's will and you are doing what He's telling you to do, that's when the floodgates of heaven just open up. And that is when that scripture that He will do exceedingly abundantly all that you can ask or think started happening for me. Hey, you've got this honor roll. Hey, you've got this Dean's Award. Hey, and it was like, you've got this research award. Things I kept, like, I didn't even have to always pray for things to happen, but God just made them happen. And it was crazy. It was like, it was blowing my mind. And I was like, maybe now I can be a doctor. Maybe now I am going to be a doctor.